Ukraine just hit something big in Russia. Something irreplaceable that was located 1,000 miles away. Putin thought that Ukraine would never be able to do something like this. He was wrong. In the most significant surgical strike of the war so far, Ukraine has ignited the lifeblood of Putin's military machine. And all Putin can do is watch it burn, as Russia can't stop the fire that Ukraine is raining down upon it. To find out what happened, we have to head to Gubakha, which is in the Perm region of Russia. That region, which is nestled near the Ural Mountains and situated along the banks of the Kama River, is located on the European part of Russia. It should be well out of Ukraine's range. Gubakha itself is a 1,600-kilometer or 994-mile journey from Ukraine. Perhaps that's why Putin thought that one of his most important chemical-producing facilities would be safe there. Even as news broke that Ukraine was developing and using long-range drones capable of traveling that distance, Putin must have thought that air defenses located at one of Russia's most vital chemical plants would be enough to stop Ukraine. Putin was wrong. On February 17th, United 24 media reported that Ukraine had pulled off a surgical strike against the Metafrax chemical site in Gubakha. Explosions and a fire have been reported at the site, which is believed to produce a wide range of chemicals that are used in the production of explosives. Among those chemicals are urea, urotropine, and pentaerythritol, all of which United 24 media says could be used as precursors for the explosives with which Russia has been pelting Ukraine from the moment that Putin launched his invasion. The Astra Telegram channel offers a little more insight, along with several photographs of the plant, one of which shows a large fire that has been sparked by Ukraine's long-range drones. Those drones would have had to travel an enormous distance, bypassing Russian air defenses as they did, and there may well be a secret technique that Ukraine used to pull the strike off. We'll expose that technique later in the video, as it's a stroke of genius that may explain why Ukraine has enjoyed so much success with its deep strike strategy over the last few months. But returning to the Astra report, the Telegram channel says, Astra previously reported, citing a subscriber and local residents' social media posts, that at least 4 drones struck the Metafrax chemical plant, causing a fire. Plant employees were sent to a bomb shelter. As per usual, Russia's defense ministry is pretending that nothing happened. Astra says that the ministry has reported the downing of 4 of Ukraine's drones over the Perm region, which just so happens to be the same number of drones that eyewitnesses say scored direct hits on the plant. Business Insider adds that Russia is claiming to have shot down 334 of Ukraine's fixed-wing drones over the 24 hours leading up to the strike. We all know where this is going. Russia is going to claim that Ukraine's drone debris did all of the damage. How many times are we going to have to hear that tired old excuse for strikes that clearly landed exactly where Ukraine intended them to land? The same Telegram channel also offers more insight into the chemicals that the Metafrax plant produces. Beyond the 3 already mentioned, the plant makes methanol and hexamine, which are also key components used for the manufacture of explosive weapons. Formalin and synthetic resins are also made at the plant, suggesting that it may have some commercial purposes along with its military slant. If that's the case, then Ukraine's strike is a 2-for-1 in the sense that it deprives both Russia's military and its people, thus delivering yet more pain to a country that thought it would never have to deal with Ukraine attacking it on its own territory. Speaking of 2-for-1 strikes, there's a second surgical strike that Ukraine pulled off at around the same time as the Metafrax attack. Stick with us because we'll reveal it all in a couple of minutes. In Business Insider's reports on the strike, it points out that the plant that Ukraine struck was already sanctioned, suggesting that Ukraine may have attacked because the sanctions weren't doing enough to stop plant operations. The same outlet also points out that Metafrax isn't any old producer of methanol. It's actually one of the largest in all of Russia and Europe. A Security Service of Ukraine, or SBU, source is also quoted by Business Insider as saying, "The destruction of such objects reduces the pace of ammunition production, complicates the supply of resources for the army, and directly affects the reduction of the intensity of hostilities against Ukraine. There's your reason for Ukraine's attack." This strike, like so many before and those that will come after, is part of a systematic campaign by Ukraine to destroy the military-industrial facility that Russia depends upon to prop up Putin's invasion. When facilities like Metafrax burn, pressure on Ukraine is relieved. And when there's less pressure, Ukraine can get down to the important business of destroying as many Russian invaders as possible. We've just mentioned the SBU. That may give you a clue as to who conducted this latest surgical strike. If you guessed the SBU's Alpha unit, then give yourself a pat on the back. The unit, which has become one of Ukraine's most effective in the deep strike arena, has been wreaking havoc on Russia for well over a year. In 2025 alone, the Alpha unit destroyed $4 billion worth of Russia's air defenses. It's easy to see why. Every air defense system that the unit takes down is a system that can't guard the skies over Russia's key facilities. It's not a huge stretch to suggest that the attack on Perm's chemical plant was made possible by the Alpha unit destroying the defenses that guarded the hundreds of miles of territory its drones would have to fly over to reach the plant. And once those drones arrived, they delivered their payloads with deadly efficiency. Remember, there's a secret technique that Ukraine may have used to carry out this 1,000-mile strike. But before we get to that, we told you earlier that the Perm strike wasn't the only one that Ukraine carried out that has shut off Russia's war lifeblood. Also on February 17th, Business Insider reported that Ukraine had managed to score direct hits with its drones on a key Black Sea oil terminal in what amounts to yet another attack designed to ignite the most important resource that Russia has for funding its war in Ukraine. Business Insider reports that Ukraine's drones managed to score hits on the Tamanavtogas oil terminal, which is in Russia's Krasnodar region. That alone would be big news, but the fact that this terminal is located in what the outlet calls one of the largest ports that Russia has in the Black Sea region is an indicator that the air defense destruction campaign launched by Ukraine last year has worked. Such a vital port has to be protected. Russia needs that port to ship its illicit oil to the dwindling number of nations that are willing to buy it. If Ukraine is conducting successful strikes against such crucial pieces of equipment as the Tamanavtogas oil terminal, that means Russia's air defenses are now worn so thin that they are either incapable of stopping Ukraine's drones or they simply aren't there to do the job because Russia has to prioritize where they go. Either way, it's a win for Ukraine. It means yet more deep strike attempts will be successful. Ukraine has actually proven that, as the February 17th attack on the Tamanavtogas facility is the second such strike that Ukraine pulled off in less than a month. On January 22nd, a similar attack led to several tanks and pipelines at the terminal being destroyed, with later assessments determining that Ukraine had caused an estimated $50 million in losses. Whether those losses were caused by Russia losing oil that it intended to sell, repairing equipment that Ukraine damaged, or both, isn't specified by Business Insider. What we do know is that Ukraine managed to cause plenty more damage to the terminal in the latest attack. But before we dig into that, there's a lot more where this came from. If this sort of insight is what you crave, make sure you're subscribed to The Military Show. New Sky has more details about the damage done to the Tamanavtogas facility. It says that Ukraine's strike caused a fire in the terminal area of the facility, which has been confirmed by both the SBU and open-source intelligence outlets that reported on the strike. Shipping data has also been revealing, the outlet notes, as there has been a reduction in tanker traffic from the Tamanavtogas site in the wake of Ukraine's attack. The logic here is that few tankers heading out means there's less oil available to load into those tankers. It doesn't take a genius to put two and two together to realize that the oil that was meant to head out on those tankers is the same oil that is now in flames due to Ukraine's drones. New Sky adds that insurance companies are also reviewing the rates they offer to ships that dock in Russia's Black Sea ports. That claim was confirmed by Reuters in January, which reported that rates had already jumped for ships sailing in the region after unidentified drones struck a pair of Greek-managed oil tankers in the Black Sea region. Those strikes led to war insurance costs jumping to 1% of the value of the ship from previous rates of 0.6% and 0.8% in December 2025. Those are the highest rates seen since 2023, and they're another indicator that bad things are happening to Russia's ports and tankers in the Black Sea. What we're seeing with all of this is Ukraine's plan paying dividends. Each strike against Russia's Black Sea oil logistics is designed to inflict as much pain as possible. The most obvious form of that pain comes from the money that Russia loses directly. Burning oil can't be sold, and damaged terminals have to be repaired before they can be used again. However, it's the underreported long-term damage caused by things like insurance rate hikes that also sting Russia. Remember that Russia is operating a massive shadow fleet of ships to sail its oil out of the country. When the state has to pay more for insurance to keep those ships running, that amounts to more money lost from the Russian war purse. We can even link some estimated figures to the strategy. According to Ukrainian shipping magazine, Russia had spent about $14 billion on a fleet of just over 400 tankers for its shadow fleet by May 2025. That means that Russia has been getting its aging tankers for about $35 million each. Let's use the percentages that we mentioned earlier. 0.6% of $35 million is $210,000, whereas 1% is $350,000. The difference caused by the January rate change is $140,000 per ship. Multiply that by 400 ships and you get a $56 million hole burned into the Russian war budget due to insurance hikes alone. Russia has been feeling the pain in its Black Sea ports for a while now. Back in December, oilprice.com reported that Russian shipments of refined oil products had fallen by 0.8% in November when compared to the previous October. That decline came on the back of a Ukrainian strike against the port of Novorossiysk, which also led to a massive slump in fuel exports from Russia's Black Sea and Azov Sea ports. A 30.2% month-on-month collapse was recorded in that area, all of which contributed to Russia's total oil exports dropping by about 420,000 barrels per day in November 2025. We've mentioned the word systematic several times in the video. This is what systematic means. Every single strike that Ukraine pulls off against facilities like Tamanavtogaz and the Metafrax chemical plant causes both direct and indirect damage that keeps on siphoning money out of the pot that Putin is increasingly struggling to keep at a large enough level to wage his war against Ukraine. With less money comes far weaker assaults on Ukrainian territory, which goes a long way to explaining things like Russia losing a staggering 31,700 soldiers in January alone. Those soldiers have fewer weapons and insufficient equipment because Ukraine's deep strikes both reduce the amount that Russia can spend to equip its soldiers and, as was the case with the Metafrax strike, take away the weapons that Russia needs to sustain its assaults. And these long-range strikes may be being pulled off because Ukraine has come up with a genius method to circumvent Russia's remaining air defenses, allowing it to get its drones closer to their targets before they're sent to deliver their explosive payloads. We mentioned this secret strategy earlier in the video, and it can be summed up in one word: balloons. On February 17th, the New Voice of Ukraine reported that Ukraine has started using military balloons to deliver its drone strikes into Russian territory. These balloons have several uses. Reconnaissance is among them, which is no surprise, given that balloons have been used for that purpose for decades. However, Ukraine is also using balloons to transport cargo as decoys and to directly carry out strike operations. This is a brilliant strategy because balloons overcome many of the problems that Ukraine's drones face. Balloons aren't vulnerable to the same electronic warfare tricks that send drones astray, such as GPS jamming, and they're often far more difficult to detect on radar than drones. The approach has enabled strikes deep inside Russian territory, including oil fields, refineries, shipping terminals, and rail infrastructure, putting pressure on Russia's economy, the outlet states. Ukraine has even been able to take advantage of the prevailing winds in the country, which are easterly and naturally blow the balloons into Russian territory. Throw artificial intelligence into the mix, which Ukraine is using to predict weather and wind patterns, and you get a devastating combination of old and new that is causing major problems for Russia. The New Voice of Ukraine says that these balloons can fly higher than drones and fighter jets, potentially putting them out of the range of air defenses. They're also loaded with solar panels, allowing long periods of operation, along with sensors and cameras that likely contribute to their ability to autonomously adjust their course. So maybe not so old after all, more like a new and interesting strategy to attain air superiority that Russia can't seem to counter. Now, we don't know if Ukraine used military balloons in either of the strikes we've covered in this video, but it's possible. For the Metafrax strike, balloons may have helped Ukraine's strike drones navigate through denser Russian air defenses that are in and around Ukrainian territory before those balloons release their drones to fly the rest of the way to the poorly guarded chemical plant, for instance. Looking beyond Ukraine's surgical strikes, there are a few things that we can deduce from what Ukraine did leading up to February 17th. One of those things is something that we've already mentioned. Ukraine isn't slowing down in its systematic campaign to destroy Russia from the inside. Both of the strikes we've covered cost Russia money and weaken the country's military directly or otherwise. This is death by 1,000 cuts, and Ukraine just inflicted a pair of massive slices that have Russia bleeding out the oil and chemicals that are the lifeblood of Putin's entire invasion. We're also seeing Ukraine conduct strikes deeper and deeper into Russian territory. A 1,000-mile strike is nothing to be sniffed at, especially when you consider the fact that this strike was carried out using drones. Ukraine didn't break any records when it attacked Metafrax. It actually did that just a few days before, when SBU drones scored direct hits on the Ukhta oil refinery in Russia's Komi Republic. But there wasn't much difference between that strike and the Metafrax one. In the case of the Ukhta refinery, Ukraine's drones traveled 1,750 kilometers, or about 1,087 miles. The Metafrax strike was less than 90 miles below that, and both show that Ukraine is getting increasingly comfortable striking at a very deep range inside Russian territory. That will worry Putin. Now, facilities that he thought were safe, facilities that he had hidden away deep in Russia, are finding themselves in Ukraine's crosshairs. And you have to assume that some of Russia's most valuable assets are being kept as far away from Ukraine as possible to keep them away from drones. That strategy is now up in the air. Even if Russia builds factories even deeper into its territory, that just means a logistical nightmare forms, leading to equipment taking even longer to reach the front lines. Again, this is systematic destruction, directly and indirectly. But on top of all of this, Ukraine is also building something with its deep strike campaign: leverage. Ahead of peace talks in Geneva, Russia has been trying to position Ukraine as a country that is on the verge of collapse. Ukraine's military is crumbling, it can't hurt the all-powerful Russia, and all the rest of that nonsense. Every time that Ukraine pulls off strikes like those we've seen in Perm and the Black Sea, it shatters the narrative that Putin is trying to create. As News Sky points out, these latest strikes send a signal that Ukraine doesn't view peace negotiations as a reason to reduce the pressure it's piling on Russia. Why should it? Russia isn't pausing its long-range attacks, and Ukraine wants to make it clear that its drones and missiles can reach targets deep into Russia, and will continue doing so for as long as Putin drags out his failed invasion. As Forbes points out, Ukraine's drone strikes have broadly weakened Russia's long-term warfighting capacity, and that's the whole point. Every time a drone touches down on a Russian target, it exposes the fact that Russia is far weaker than Putin claims. That is leverage. It's what Ukraine can use to get what it needs out of peace discussions, because it allows Ukraine to sit at the table and say, "This will keep happening if you don't stop the war," to Putin's representatives. Whether Putin will stop or not is another question, as he has forced himself into a no-win situation. Putin can't quit. It would look weak if he did. But he also can't keep the war that he started going forever. The numbers prove that, and they're absolutely brutal. Russia isn't going to recover for over a century after what Ukraine has done to it, and you can find out why if you watch our video. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to The Military Show for more in-depth coverage of Ukraine's latest strikes against Russia. And thank you for watching.